Welcome to Stories by the Fireplace. Tonight, I'm sitting here in my favourite chair, the fire glowing beside me, ready to tell you a gentle Christmas story. So get comfortable, let the sound of the fire calm you. And if you enjoy these cosy moments, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a like. Now, let's begin. Prologue. The train ride home, the train moves steadily through the quiet night, its rhythmic hum filling the cabin like a lullaby. Emma leaned her head against the cool glass of the window, watching as snowflakes clung to the glass for a moment before vanishing into rivulets of melting water. Beyond the glass stretched an endless blur of snowy fields, dark woods, and the faint, glowing lights of distant houses tucked into the winter landscape. It had been years since she had taken this journey, years since she had left the city behind and returned home for Christmas. The thought made her chest ache with a mix of longing and uncertainty. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket, pulling her back for a moment. A quick glance revealed a string of unread work emails, each one demanding attention. She sighed, locked the screen, and tucked the phone away again. Tonight was not for work. Tonight was for slowing down, for remembering. The train swayed gently, and Emma closed her eyes, letting the subtle vibrations lull her. She could still hear the faint murmur of other passengers, the soft crinkle of snack wrappers, a muffled cough, the rustle of pages turning in a book. Somewhere down the aisle, a child giggled sleepily, and their mother whispered a gentle hush. It was all so ordinary, yet so soothing. Emma opened her eyes again and reached into her bag for the thermos she had packed before leaving the apartment. The faint aroma of cinnamon cocoa filled the air as she unscrewed the cap. She smiled as the warm steam brushed against her face. One sip, and the memories came flooding back. Christmases long ago, curled up under blankets at home, her mother bringing in mugs of cocoa dusted with cinnamon and nutmeg. The city always felt rushed, even at Christmas. Deadlines didn't pause for twinkling lights, and meetings didn't stop for snowfall. But here, on this train gliding steadily toward Willowbrook, time felt slower. Every moment stretched, every detail softened. Emma's gaze drifted toward a reflection in the window, faint, ghostly, layered over the snowy blur outside. She studied the weariness in her own eyes. How long had it been since she had really let herself rest? How long since she had listened to the quiet? The train passed through a small town, its station glowing like a lantern in the night. Emma caught glimpses of warmly lit shop windows, wreaths hanging from lampposts, and people huddled in scarves, rushing home with shopping bags. She imagined their lives, their stories, their own versions of Christmas. For a moment, she felt like a child again, peering out at the world with wide-eyed wonder. As the train moved on, the night grew darker and the snow heavier. The flakes swirled past the glass like tiny dancers, catching the faint glow of the train lights before disappearing into the shadows. Emma thought of Willowbrook, the streets she had walked as a child, the Christmas fairs she had attended, the way the entire town seemed to glow during the holidays. She could almost hear the faint sound of bells echoing through the crisp air. She leaned back in her seat, wrapping her scarf tighter around her neck. In her lap lay a worn leather-bound notebook. She traced the edges of the cover with her fingertips before opening it. Inside, the pages were filled with messy handwriting, little sketches, and lists of memories she didn't want to forget. She had started the notebook years ago, to moments when everything in her life felt too fast, too fleeting. On the first page was a simple list, written in neat block letters, things that feel like Christmas. She read through the list, her lips moving silently with the words, snow crunching under boots, the smell of pine needles, candlelight flickering in the dark, laughter echoing in a warm room, the sound of wrapping paper tearing, a single bell ringing somewhere in the distance. Emma smiled faintly. She added another item to the list, riding the train home. The train slowed suddenly, the brakes squealing softly as it approached another small stop. Outside, the platform was nearly empty, save for a bundled-up man waiting with a suitcase at his feet. He climbed aboard, brushing snow from his shoulders, and the doors closed again with a sigh. Emma watched as the train pulled away, leaving the little platform glowing faintly in the snowy night until it disappeared into the distance. Her cocoa had cooled, but she didn't mind. She sipped slowly, savouring the quiet rhythm of the journey. With each passing mile, she felt a little more of the city's weight lift from her shoulders, replaced by something gentler, warmer. She thought about her parents' house, the creak of the old wooden stairs, the garland her mother always hung along the banister, the way her father insisted on playing the same Christmas vinyl records every year. She thought about the stockings that would already be hanging by the fireplace, and the familiar scent of pine and cinnamon that always seemed to linger in the air. Emma didn't know exactly what awaited her in Willowbrook this Christmas, but she knew she needed this. Needed the quiet, the slowness, the chance to breathe again. The train rattled on, carrying her closer and closer to the place where the past met the present, where memories lived alongside new beginnings. She closed her eyes, let her breath slow, and whispered softly to herself, as though the snow outside could hear, "This Christmas, I just want to feel the magic again." The train rolled steadily into the night, and Willowbrook waited, its streets glowing faintly beneath a blanket of snow, ready to welcome her home. Chapter 1: Arrival in Willowbrook. The train slowed with a soft, drawn-out sigh, the brakes humming as though the entire machine was exhaling into the snowy night. Emma opened her eyes and lifted her head from the window, blinking at the sudden glow of lights outside. She had drifted in and out of a half-sleep during the last stretch of the journey, lulled by the hum of the rails and the gentle rocking of the carriage. Now, through the frosted glass, she could see it. Willowbrook Station. It looked just as she remembered, though perhaps a little smaller than her childhood mind had imagined. The old brick building was wrapped in garlands of evergreen, dotted with twinkling white lights. A wooden wreath hung proudly above the entrance, its red ribbons swaying gently in the winter breeze. A few lantern-style lamps cast a warm amber glow onto the platform, their light catching the falling snow in soft halos. The train came to a halt with a final shudder. Passengers gathered their belongings, the soft shuffle of coats and bags filling the cabin. Emma took her time, slipping her scarf around her neck, pulling her gloves snug, and carefully tucking her notebook back into her bag. She hesitated for just a moment, savouring the warmth of the train car before rising from her seat. The door slid open with a metallic sigh, and a rush of cold air swept in, crisp and bracing. Emma stepped down onto the snowy platform, her boots crunching softly against the thin layer of ice beneath. The cold stung her cheeks, but it was refreshing, clean, invigorating, different. different from the heavy dampness of the city air. She paused for a moment, taking it all in. The station was small, almost quaint, with its arched windows glowing from within, and the faint sound of carols drifting from a hidden speaker. A cluster of evergreen trees stood near the entrance, dusted with snow, their branches glittering beneath strands of golden lights. A wooden sign, hand-painted with the words, "Welcome to Willowbrook," stood proudly at the edge of the platform, its letters traced with frost. Around her, passengers dispersed into the night. A young couple hurried toward a waiting car, their laughter carrying softly through the air. An elderly man in a long coat tipped his hat to a station attendant before disappearing into the snowy street. Luggage wheels clicked against the platform, boots crunched, and voices echoed briefly before fading into the hush of the winter night. Emma pulled her bag a little tighter against her shoulder and began walking toward the station doors. The snow was falling thicker now, each flake swirling gently in the golden light before landing softly on her coat and hair. She brushed them away with a gloved hand, smiling faintly at the delicate sparkle they left behind. Inside, the station lobby glowed with warmth. The wooden beams overhead were draped with garlands, and a small Christmas tree stood in the corner, its branches adorned with red and gold ornaments. A faint scent of pine and cinnamon filled the air, mingling with the sharper smell of cold air still clinging to travellers as they came and went. Emma paused just inside the doorway, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. She watched as a station attendant, a cheerful woman in a red scarf, helped a family gather their bags. The children chattered excitedly about Santa, their voices echoing off the old tiled floor. For a moment, Emma stood perfectly still, letting the scene sink in. It was so different from the bustling stations she knew in the city. No blaring announcements, no rushing crowds, no echo of hurried footsteps. Here, everything felt slower, softer, touched by the gentle hum of Christmas. She walked slowly toward the exit, her boots clicking softly against the floor. A set of heavy wooden doors swung open, and the crisp night air returned, carrying with it the faint jingling of bells from somewhere down the street. The town stretched out before her, quiet yet alive with the subtle glow of Christmas. Main Street curved gently away from the station, its storefronts dressed in wreaths and garlands, windows glowing warmly against the snow. Street lamps were wrapped in red ribbons, their light casting golden pools onto the frosted sidewalks, and above it all, snowflakes drifted lazily through the night, softening the edges of the world into something dreamlike. Emma's breath caught. It was exactly as she remembered, and yet it felt new. She pulled her phone from her pocket, the screen lighting up her face for a moment. A text from her mother blinked at the top. "We're so excited you're home. Drive safe. Dinner's waiting." Emma smiled, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. She typed back quickly. "Just arrived. On my way." Sliding the phone back into her coat, she started down the sidewalk, her boots crunching softly against the snow. The cold bit at her cheeks, but she welcomed it, tucking her chin into her scarf. She could feel the faint buzz of energy in the air, the kind of quiet joy that seemed to hum through every corner of Willowbrook at Christmas time. As she walked, she passed a bakery with fogged-up windows, the scent of fresh bread and sugar drifting faintly into the night. A chalkboard outside read, "Holiday specials, gingerbread, peppermint mocha, spiced apple pie. Emma paused, tempted, but smiled to herself and kept walking. There would be plenty of time for treats later. For now, she wanted to reach home. The streets were calm, but not empty. A few cars rolled slowly past, headlights glowing softly against the snow. A group of teenagers hurried by, their laughter echoing as they tossed snowballs at one another. And from somewhere nearby came the faint sound of music, a carol sung in harmony, the voices warm and steady against the cold. Emma's heart ached with nostalgia. Willowbrook was small, and in her younger years she had dreamed of escaping to the city, of living fast, of doing something big. But tonight, in the quiet snow, she realized how much she had missed this, how much she had needed it. By the time she reached the familiar bend in the road, her heart was thudding, not from exertion, but from anticipation. At the top of the hill stood her parents' house, glowing like a beacon against the snowy night. The front porch was wrapped in twinkling lights, the wreath on the door the same one her mother had hung for years. Through the window she could see the soft flicker of a fire, the shadows of movement inside. She stopped at the foot of the walkway, snow crunching softly beneath her boots. She took a deep breath, her exhale clouding into the night. Then, with a small nervous smile, she climbed the steps and reached for the door handle. The door swung open before she could knock. Emma, her mother's voice rang with warmth, and in an instant she was wrapped in a hug that smelled of cinnamon and pine. Behind her, her father smiled from his favourite armchair, a record player spinning faintly in the background. The house was alive with warmth and light and love. Emma let out a breath she hadn't realised she was holding. She was home. Chapter 2. The family home. The warmth hit Emma the moment she stepped inside, wrapping around her like a soft blanket. The air smelled of cinnamon, pine, and something savoury baking in the oven. After hours on the train and a long, chilly walk, the contrast was overwhelming. She closed her eyes for a moment, just breathing it in, before her mother's arms squeezed her tighter. "Oh, it's been too long," her mother whispered, pulling back to look at her. Her cheeks were flushed from cooking, and her sweater was dusted with a faint trail of flour. "You look tired, sweetheart, but happy." Emma laughed softly, loosening her scarf and peeling off her gloves. "I am tired, but it feels good. Feels right to be here." Her father rose slowly from his chair, the old wood creaking beneath him. "Welcome home, Em," he said with a warm smile, his voice carrying that steady, grounding tone she had always associated with comfort. He crossed the room and pulled her into a brief but firm hug, the kind that spoke of unspoken love and safety. The house felt exactly as she remembered, though maybe a little smaller, a little older. The garland still trailed along the banister of the stairs, its twinkling lights blinking gently in soft patterns. Stockings hung above the fireplace, each one stitched with a name. The old record player hummed quietly in the background, playing Bing Crosby's voice through the gentle crackle of vinyl. Emma set her bag down by the door and slipped off her boots, the snow melting quickly against the welcome mat. She wiggled her toes inside her socks, grateful to feel the warmth of the wooden floor beneath her. Her eyes drifted to the tree in the corner of the living room. It wasn't as tall or as perfectly shaped as the ones she had seen in city windows, but it radiated something the others didn't. Love. Each ornament had a story. A lopsided star her brother had made in kindergarten. glass baubles passed down from her grandmother, a faded angel with bent wings that had crowned the tree for decades. The lights twinkled softly, reflecting off the tinsel and sending shimmers of gold across the walls. She approached it slowly, fingers brushing against the ornaments, her breath catching at the familiar textures. "You kept everything the same," she said softly. "Of course we did," her father replied. "It wouldn't be Christmas without these old things." Her mother bustled back into the kitchen, calling over her shoulder, "Dinner's almost ready. Sit, sit. You must be starving after that long trip." Emma eased onto the couch, sinking into its familiar cushions. The blanket draped across the back was one she remembered curling up with as a child, its knitted threads slightly frayed, but still impossibly soft. She pulled it around her shoulders and let out a slow, content sigh. From the kitchen came the faint clatter of dishes, the rhythmic sound of her mother humming as she worked, and the sizzle of something being pulled from the oven. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sounds and smells wash over her. It was the kind of symphony you couldn't buy or stage. It was simply the sound of home. Her father lowered himself back into his chair, the springs groaning gently. He poured himself a glass of mulled cider from the pitcher on the side table, the cinnamon stick clinking softly against the glass. "You'll stay a while this year, won't you?" he asked. Emma smiled faintly, tucking the blanket closer. "That's the plan. I needed this, more than I even realized." He nodded knowingly, taking a sip of his drink. The fire crackled in the hearth, throwing soft light across his face. Outside, the wind whispered against the windows, rattling faintly, but not intrusively, just enough to remind them of the storm moving through the town. Emma's eyes wandered again to the stockings. Hers still hung there, next to her brother's, though he lived states away now and wouldn't be able to come this year. She traced her name with her eyes, stitched in red thread by her grandmother so many years ago. Something inside her chest tightened, but in a gentle, comforting way, like the ache of something you're grateful to have known. Her mother called from the kitchen, "Emma, come taste this gravy. I want to make sure it's not too salty." Emma laughed, tossing off the blanket and rising to her feet. The kitchen glowed with golden light, pots and pans steaming gently, the counters cluttered with bowls of chopped vegetables, spices, and half-prepared dishes. Her mother stood at the stove, a wooden spoon in her hand, and extended it toward her. Emma leaned in, blowing gently before taking a sip. The savoury warmth spread across her tongue, rich and comforting. She closed her eyes. "Perfect, just like always." Her mother beamed, satisfied. "Good. Now, sit at the table and keep me company while I finish this up." Emma slid onto one of the wooden chairs, her fingers tracing the familiar grooves in the tabletop. This was where she had done her homework as a child, where the family had shared countless meals, where birthdays and Christmas mornings had been celebrated. Every scratch, every mark held a story. "Do you remember the year we tried to make gingerbread houses?" her mother asked with a chuckle, glancing at her from the stove. Emma grinned. "How could I forget? Mine collapsed in 10 minutes. I ended up eating half the candy instead of decorating with it." Her father called from the living room. "I still say mine was the sturdiest." Her mother rolled her eyes, laughing. "That's only because you used so much icing it hardened like concrete." The three of them laughed together, the sound warm and easy, filling the house in a way Emma hadn't realized she had missed. Dinner was soon spread across the table. Roasted chicken potatoes whipped fluffy and light, roasted carrots glazed with honey, and a basket of warm rolls wrapped in a cloth to keep them steaming. Emma filled her plate slowly, savouring each bite, the flavours bursting with familiarity. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't extravagant, but it was everything she needed. As they ate, her parents asked about her life in the city, the job, the apartment, the friends she had made. Emma answered as best she could, but kept the details light. She didn't want to bring the rush of the city into this quiet space. Tonight was about being here, present, in this moment. When the plates were finally cleared, her mother insisted Emma stay on the couch while she and her father tidied up. Emma curled once more beneath the knitted blanket, her body heavy with comfort, her eyelids growing drowsy from warmth and fullness. From the kitchen came the soft clink of dishes, her parents' voices murmuring together. The fire crackled steadily, casting shifting patterns of gold and amber across the walls. Outside, snow tapped gently against the windows, and the world seemed to narrow into nothing more than this. A safe, quiet room filled with love. Emma exhaled, whispering to herself so softly it almost disappeared into the air. This is Christmas. And with that thought, she let her eyes drift closed, not into sleep, but into a peaceful stillness, her heart finally at rest. Chapter 3. Coffee Shop Conversations. The morning light poured softly through the frosted windows as Emma stirred awake. For a moment, she lay still beneath the knitted blanket. The scent of pine and faint smoke from the fireplace lingering in the air. Outside, she could hear the muffled hush of snow still falling, layering the world in white silence. She rose slowly, tugging on her warmest sweater, one she had left behind years ago in the old dresser upstairs. It smelled faintly of cedar from her mother's careful storage, and slipping into it felt like stepping into another time. She pulled her hair into a loose bun, slid on her boots, and wrapped her scarf snugly around her neck. "I'll be back in a bit," she called toward the kitchen, where her mother was already bustling with breakfast preparations. Her father's voice echoed from the living room. "Check out the old coffee shop for me. See if they still make those ginger molasses cookies I like." Emma smiled, her heart warmed by the request. "I'll report back." The town felt hushed under its blanket of snow, the air crisp and bright as her boots crunched against the sidewalks. Lamp-posts glimmered with festive wreaths, and store windows sparkled with twinkling lights. A few bundled-up townsfolk offered warm nods as they passed, and Emma felt that strange, pleasant sensation of being both a visitor and a native, belonging to this place even after years away. The coffee shop was nestled on the corner of Main Street, its painted wooden sign swaying gently in the cold breeze. Harbour and Hearth Cafe. Through the glass windows, Emma could see people sitting at small tables, steam curling up from mugs, laughter mingling with the faint jingle of holiday music. She pushed the door open, and immediately a bell chimed above her head. The warmth inside wrapped around her, bringing with it the smell of roasted beans, vanilla syrup, and freshly baked pastries. "Welcome," called a cheerful voice. Behind the counter stood a young barista with rosy cheeks and a red knit hat pulled snug over her ears. She looked up with a smile that crinkled her eyes. "Cold out there, huh? What can I get you?" Emma stepped closer, glancing at the chalkboard menu filled with hand-drawn snowflakes and candy canes. "One peppermint mocha, please, and do you happen to still have ginger molasses cookies?" The barista's grin widened. We do. Fresh out of the oven this morning. She slid a cookie into a small paper bag and placed it beside the steaming drink as Emma paid. Emma carried her order to a seat by the window, where frost crept along the glass like delicate lace. She settled in, cupping the warm mug in her hands, the heat seeping into her fingers. Outside, the snow continued to drift lazily, coating cars and benches, while inside the cafe hummed with life. At the next table, two older women in knitted shawls whispered over their tea, exchanging recipes and laughter. A young couple sat near the fireplace, their hands entwined, sharing a slice of pumpkin bread. The entire room felt alive with gentle togetherness, a quiet chorus of voices and clinking cups blending into a soothing background hum. As Emma bit into the cookie, the flavour burst across her tongue. Spicy ginger, rich molasses, the faint crunch of sugar crystals on top. It tasted exactly as she remembered, as though no time at all had passed. She closed her eyes, letting the sweetness linger, when a familiar voice pulled her back. Emma Caldwell. She turned, startled, to see a man standing just a few steps away. He was tall, bundled in a navy coat, a woolen scarf tucked neatly around his neck. His hair, once jet black, now held streaks of silver at the temples. His eyes, though, were unmistakable, warm hazel with the same mischievous glint she remembered from high school. "David?" Emma asked, disbelief softening into a smile. He laughed, running a hand through his hair. "It really is you. I thought I was imagining things when I walked in." Emma rose from her seat, and they embraced, the hug warm but tinged with the awkwardness of years apart. "What are you doing here?" she asked as they sat down together. "I moved back a couple of years ago," he said, shrugging off his coat. "City life was, well, too much. I missed the quiet, missed this place." He gestured around the cafe. "I figured if I was going to build something real, it had to be here." Emma studied him, noticing the lines of age that had deepened his face, but also the easy way he smiled, the steadiness in his presence. "It suits you," she said. "I can't believe we ran into each other like this." "Maybe it's the season," David said, grinning. "Christmas has a way of bringing people together." They talked for nearly an hour, slipping back into conversation with surprising ease. They reminisced about school days, shared updates about mutual friends, and laughed over old stories that felt distant yet strangely close. Every so often, the cafe's door would open, letting in a swirl of cold air and the sound of bells, only for the warmth and chatter to settle again. Finally, David leaned back, sipping his coffee. "So, how long are you here for?" Emma hesitated, swirling the last of her mocha. "A while. I needed, I don't know, space, rest, maybe a reminder of what Christmas feels like." "Well," David said with a hopeful smile, "then we'll have plenty of time to catch up. There's a tree lighting in the square tonight. You should come. It's still the same as it was when we were kids, only maybe a little brighter." Emma felt a spark stir inside her chest, a mix of nostalgia and something new. She nodded. "I'd like that." As they stood to leave, the bell above the door chimed again, the cold rushing in to meet them. The snowflakes swirled around the street, glowing in the lamplight. Emma tucked the cookie bag into her coat pocket, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks, and as she walked home, she thought to herself, maybe this trip wasn't just about remembering Christmas. Maybe it was about discovering something entirely new. the tree lighting. By evening, Willowbrook was alive with anticipation. Emma bundled herself in her heaviest coat, tucked a knitted hat over her ears, and stepped outside. The air was crisp and sharp, every breath she took forming a soft cloud that drifted into the night sky. Snow crunched under her boots as she made her way down Main Street, guided by the distant sound of carolers and the glow of festive lights. The town square sat at the heart of Willowbrook, and tonight it pulsed with warmth despite the biting cold. Strings of lights were draped across the trees, lampposts and rooftops, their golden glow flickering against the dark. Families gathered in clusters, their laughter mingling with the faint notes of holiday music drifting from a speaker near the bandstand. In the centre stood the great evergreen tree, towering high above the crowd. It was wrapped in strands of lights, though they remained dark for now, waiting for the moment of illumination. Ornaments hung heavy on its branches, reds, golds, silvers, catching glimpses of the lamplight. A star, still unlit, perched proudly at the top. Emma slipped quietly through the crowd, her scarf pulled snug around her chin. The chatter around her buzzed gently, children squealing in delight as they clutched cups of hot cocoa, parents exchanging greetings with neighbours, and older townsfolk reminiscing about tree lightings of decades past. She spotted David near the front, waving when their eyes met. His cheeks were flushed from the cold, his gloved hands wrapped around a steaming paper cup. "You made it," he said warmly as she joined him. "I wouldn't miss it," Emma replied, smiling. "It feels just like when we were kids." "Maybe even better," he said, handing her the cup. "Hot cider, my treat." The first sip warmed her from the inside, the blend of cinnamon and apple reminding her of winters long ago. She let the heat linger in her chest as the mayor stepped onto the small wooden stage set up before the tree. "Welcome, friends," the mayor's voice rang out, crackling slightly through the microphone. "On this snowy night, as we gather once again in the heart of Willowbrook, let us remember what this season is truly about. Family, kindness, and the light we share with one another." The crowd hummed in agreement, a ripple of warmth passing through the gathered townsfolk. Emma's heart tightened pleasantly, caught between memory and presence. The mayor continued, "And now let us count down together as we bring this year's tree to life." Children bounced with excitement, their voices carrying over the crowd. Emma glanced at David, who was already smiling, his eyes fixed on the great evergreen. 10, the crowd roared. 9, Emma joined in, her voice mingling with dozens of others, each number building in volume in anticipation. 3, 2, 1. The square erupted in cheers as the tree blazed to life, thousands of tiny bulbs flickering on, all at once. Golden light spilled into the night, reflecting off the snow and casting everything in a warm, magical glow. The star at the top lit last, a brilliant burst that sent gasps through the crowd. Emma's breath caught. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. The snow fell more gently. The air itself seemed to hum with joy, and she felt a sudden swell of something she hadn't realised she had been missing. Belonging. Carolers began to sing, their voices rising in harmony. Soft, sweet notes of silent night weaving through the square. Emma's eyes stung as the lyrics filled the air, blending with the laughter and applause around her. David leaned closer, his voice, low, meant just for her. Still magical, isn't it? Emma nodded, unable to find words. Instead, she let the moment soak into her. The glow of the tree, the sound of children singing along off-key, the warmth of the cider in her hands, and the faint brush of David's shoulder against hers. After the ceremony, the square shifted into celebration. Stalls opened along the edges, offering roasted chestnuts, gingerbread cookies, and spiced drinks. A small band began to play, instruments mingling with the joyful murmur of the crowd. Couples skated on the frozen pond nearby, their laughter echoing across the ice. Emma and David wandered slowly through it all, pausing at a stall to share a paper cone of sugared almonds. The sweetness crunched between their teeth, sending warmth through their cold fingertips. They watched children chase each other through the snow, scarves trailing behind them, their joy infectious. "Do you ever think," Emma asked softly, "that maybe the magic we felt as kids never really goes away? Maybe it just waits for us to come back?" David smiled, brushing a bit of sugar from his glove. "I think maybe you're right, and maybe it shines even brighter when we finally slow down enough to see it again." They stood there for a while longer, silent but content, the tree towering above them like a guardian of memories both old and new. And for Emma, this night was not just about remembering Christmas. It was about rediscovering it, alive, present, and waiting for her all along. Chapter 5. The winter market. The morning after the tree lighting, Emma woke to the sound of faint church bells in the distance, and the steady whisper of wind brushing against the windows. Snow had fallen heavily through the night, and now the world outside gleamed. Blankets of white-covered rooftops, cars and trees, while the streets shimmered under the pale gold of winter sunlight. Her mother was already humming in the kitchen, and the aroma of fresh bread drifted through the house. Emma smiled sleepily, pulling on her coat and scarf once more. Today, she had promised herself, she would visit the winter market, a tradition that had been the beating heart of Willowbrook's Christmas season for as long as she could remember. By late morning, the square was alive again, though in a different way from the night before. Wooden stalls lined the cobblestone streets, their rooftops dusted with snow and garlands twined around their frames. Twinkling lights hung in strands overhead, creating a canopy of gold and silver that glittered even in the daylight. The air was filled with music, an old brass quartet playing carols near the fountain, their notes carrying warmly across the square. Emma stepped into the flow of people, her boots crunching softly beneath her. The crowd moved slowly, everyone bundled in coats and scarves, their breath puffing in clouds as they laughed, greeted neighbours, and browsed the stalls. The scents were the first thing she noticed: roasting chestnuts, cinnamon sugar, mulled wine bubbling in copper pots, and the faint tang of pine from wreaths being sold by a local craftsman. The aromas wrapped around her, drawing her deeper into the market like an irresistible spell. At one stall, a woman sold handmade candles, each one scented differently: spiced apple, evergreen, vanilla bean. Emma picked up a small jar, unscrewed the lid, and inhaled deeply. The fragrance of orange and clove filled her senses, instantly pulling her back to childhood memories of her grandmother studding oranges with cloves and hanging them by ribbons around the house. "How much for this one?" Emma asked softly. The woman smiled. $5. But for you, dear, 4. You're Caldwell's girl, aren't you? Emma blinked in surprise. I am. I thought so, the woman said warmly. Your mother used to bring you here every year for hot cocoa. You've grown, but I'd know those eyes anywhere. Emma blushed, handing over the money. Thank you. I'll take it. She slipped the candle into her bag, her heart warmed by the recognition. Further along, children clustered around a stall where a man carved wooden toys, tiny trains, rocking horses, even miniature reindeer. His hands moved with careful precision, shaving curls of wood that fell like snowflakes onto the counter. Emma paused to watch, captivated by the soft scrape of his tools, the patience in his movements. Would you like one? The man asked with a wink, holding up a tiny carved angel. Emma smiled. Not today, but it's beautiful. She moved on, her senses alive with every sight and sound. Bells jingled from a nearby horse-drawn carriage. Laughter bubbled from a group of teenagers sipping cocoa. The air itself seemed to hum with cheer, as though the market carried its own music that no one could quite hear, but everyone could feel. Near the edge of the square, she spotted David again. He was helping an elderly woman carry her shopping bags, his breath visible in the cold as he bent to listen to something she said. When he noticed Emma watching, he grinned and waved her over. Look who I found, he said as Emma approached. Mrs. Whittaker, do you remember her? Emma's eyes lit up. Of course. You used to run the bookstore. The old woman laughed, her voice rasped with age but still strong. That's right. And you, young lady, spent half your allowance on mystery novels in my shop. Emma laughed, her cheeks flushing. Guilty. Mrs. Whittaker squeezed her arm gently. It's good to see you back, dear. This town always feels more alive when old faces return. Emma's throat tightened, touched by the words. She walked with them for a while, chatting and listening to Mrs. Whittaker's stories of winters past. Eventually, the older woman departed with a smile and a bag of sugared nuts tucked beneath her arm. David handed Emma a steaming cup of hot chocolate, rich and topped with whipped cream. I thought you could use this, he said with a grin. She accepted it gratefully, the heat seeping into her fingers. You seem to know everyone in town, she teased. That's the beauty of coming back, David replied. You realise people never really forget you, and you never really forget them. They wandered together through the stalls, sharing pastries and laughing at the kitschy ornaments for sale. Tiny Santas skiing, snowmen holding guitars, reindeer wearing sunglasses. They paused to listen to the quartet again. The deep hum of the tuba blending with the bright cheer of the trumpets. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, the lights above the market grew brighter, twinkling like stars strung overhead. Snow began to fall again, soft and steady, dusting Emma's hat and David's scarf. The crowd didn't disperse. If anything, it grew livelier, everyone welcoming the snowfall as part of the magic. Emma felt her heart swelling with a joy she hadn't expected. Every sound, every scent, every smile from strangers seemed to knit her back into the fabric of this place, and with each passing moment, she realised something. She wasn't just visiting, she was rediscovering where she belonged. Chapter 6. Christmas Eve at the church. The evening air was colder than it had been all week, crisp and still, as if the whole town was holding its breath. Snowflakes drifted gently from the dark sky, their delicate patterns glinting under the lampposts as Emma made her way toward the old stone church at the end of Willow Lane. She hadn't been inside for years, but even from a distance, the sight of its steeple rising above the rooftops made her heart ache with nostalgia. The church bells tolled softly as she approached, their deep tones resonating in the night air, mingling with the muffled crunch of footsteps on snow as townsfolk filed towards the entrance. Emma pulled her coat tighter around her, pausing at the heavy wooden doors before stepping inside. Warmth enveloped her instantly, carrying with it the scent of beeswax candles, evergreen garlands, and faint incense, the soft rustle of coats being removed, boots scuffing against the wooden floor, and whispered greetings created a hushed symphony of reverence. The church glowed with golden light. Candles lined every windowsill, flickering shadows across the stone walls. A massive Christmas tree stood near the altar, decorated with handmade ornaments from the children of Willowbrook, popsicle stick stars, paper chains, and glittering bells. Its lights twinkled like a constellation brought indoors. Emma slid into a pew near the middle, her fingers brushing against the smooth, polished wood. She sat quietly, listening as the old pipe organ began to play the opening notes of O Come, All Ye Faithful. The music swelled, filling every corner of the church, and the congregation rose to sing. Voices rose around her, some clear and strong, others soft and wavering with age, but together they blended into something beautiful. Emma sang quietly, her voice almost a whisper, yet she felt the vibrations of the hymn resonate in her chest. She remembered standing in this very spot as a child, holding a small book of carols, her mother's hand resting on her shoulder, her brother beside her, tugging at his too tight collar. When the hymn ended, the pastor stepped forward, his voice steady and warm as he spoke of hope, of kindness, and of light in dark times. His words drifted like a gentle current, weaving through the crowd. Emma found herself absorbing not just the message, but the rhythm of it, the pauses, the softness, the way his voice seemed to hush the world outside. Then came the moment she had been waiting for, the candlelight. Children passed small, thin candles down the rows, each one nestled in a paper holder to catch the wax. Emma accepted hers carefully, the cool wax smooth between her fingers. When the first flame was lit at the front, the sanctuary dimmed, leaving only the glow of the Christmas tree. One by one, the flames spread, each person leaning toward the next, touching wick to wick, until the entire church was bathed in a sea of soft golden light. Emma's candle flickered to life, the tiny flame trembling before steadying. She watched as the faces around her glowed, lined with age, soft with youth, or united in this quiet ritual of light. The organ began again, this time the gentle strains of Silent Night. Voices lifted in unison, softer now, reverent. Emma's throat tightened as she sang, her candle trembling in her hand. The melody wrapped around her like a blanket, tender and fragile, carrying with it the weight of memory and the sweetness of the present. When the final note faded, silence lingered, a silence so deep and pure that Emma felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them away, smiling faintly as the pastor spoke again, blessing the night, the season, and the hearts of all gathered. Slowly, the congregation filed out, candles extinguished one by one at the door. Outside, the snow had deepened, blanketing the world in white. The air felt sharper now, but also cleaner, as though the night itself had been washed in peace. Emma lingered on the church steps, watching her breath curl into the sky. Families walked past her, their laughter soft, children tugging at mittened hands, their faces glowing from candlelight and cold. Beside her, David appeared once again, his hands buried deep in his coat pockets, his scarf dusted with snow. "Beautiful, wasn't it?" he asked, his voice hushed. Emma nodded, her eyes still on the sky. It was more than beautiful. It was grounding, like the whole world slowed down. They stood side by side in the silence, listening to the muffled sounds of the town, the creak of snow beneath boots, the faint jingle of bells from the square. Above them, the stars glittered faintly through breaks in the clouds, distant yet steady. For Emma, this night felt like a turning point, not just a return to tradition, but a reminder of something larger, something timeless. Christmas wasn't only in the decorations or the songs, but in the moments of stillness, the light carried together, and the simple act of being present. And as they walked home together through the snow, their shoulders brushing, Emma felt the quiet certainty of something blooming, like hope, or love, or maybe both. Chapter 7. Christmas Morning. The first light of dawn crept softly across Willowbrook, brushing the snow with a pale golden glow. The world outside was hushed, wrapped in a blanket of white, as if even the town itself was still asleep. Inside Emma's childhood home, the air was thick with warmth. The faint crackle of the fireplace, the rich aroma of cinnamon and fresh coffee drifting from the kitchen, the quiet hum of a house alive with expectation. Emma stirred in her old bedroom, the familiar quilt tucked around her shoulders. For a moment, she simply lay still, listening. Somewhere downstairs, she could hear the rustle of wrapping paper, the creak of floorboards, the soft murmur of voices. A smile tugged at her lips. Christmas morning had always been her favourite sound. She swung her legs from the bed, her toes brushing against the cool rug, and slipped into her slippers. Pulling on a robe, she padded quietly to the door. As she descended the staircase, the soft glow of tree lights spilled into the hallway, twinkling in reds, golds, and silvers. The living room looked just as it had when she was a child. Stockings hung neatly along the mantel, the tree glowing proudly in the corner, its branches heavy with ornaments collected over decades. Glass baubles shimmered beside handmade decorations from years gone by. A delicate angel perched at the top, her wings catching the light like spun glass. Her mother was already in the kitchen, humming softly as she arranged plates of pastries and fruit. The clinking of china and the hiss of the kettle were comforting in their familiarity. Her father was crouched by the tree, sorting presents into neat little piles, his brow furrowed in concentration, just as he'd always done. "Good morning, sweetheart," her mother called warmly, glancing up with a smile. Emma leaned against the doorway, taking it all in. "Merry Christmas." Her father straightened, holding up a small box wrapped in shiny silver paper. "I was just about to put this under the tree, but it seems someone's up early enough to catch me." Emma laughed, shaking her head. Old habits die hard. Soon, the rest of the family began to trickle in. Her brother James arrived with his wife and their 2 children, the kids already buzzing with excitement, eyes wide as they darted toward the tree. Their giggles filled the room, high-pitched and contagious. The family gathered in the living room, mugs of cocoa and coffee in hand, the the steam rising in soft curls. They settled into chairs and cushions, the air alive with chatter and laughter. Outside, snow continued to fall in lazy spirals, but inside, warmth radiated from every corner. The ritual began. Stockings first. Emma's stocking was still the same red and white knit one she'd had since childhood, her name stitched across the top in slightly uneven letters. She reached inside and pulled out a small bundle of chocolates, a pair of cosy socks, and a tiny notebook, its cover embossed with gold stars. Her niece squealed with delight as she pulled out a small wooden train, while her nephew carefully unwrapped a puzzle. Their joy was infectious, their laughter ringing out as they showed off their treasures. Next came the presents beneath the tree. Wrapping paper tore with satisfying rips, ribbons unfurled, boxes opened. Emma received a soft scarf from her mother, a leather-bound journal from her father, and a framed photograph from James. An old picture of the two of them building a snowman in the yard. Cheeks rosy and eyes bright, she blinked back tears, tracing the edges of the frame with her finger. "This is perfect," she whispered. Her family's gifts were thoughtful, but it wasn't the objects that mattered most. It was the way each present carried a piece of memory, of connection, of love. Between the laughter and the rustling of paper, the scent of breakfast began to drift through the air. Freshly baked cinnamon rolls, scrambled eggs, crisp bacon, and coffee strong enough to fill the house. Plates were passed, hands reached across the table, and the clinking of forks and glasses created a quiet symphony of togetherness. As the morning stretched on, the children disappeared to play with their new toys, their voices echoing from the hallway. Emma lingered near the fire, her scarf draped across her lap, watching the flames dance and crackle. David arrived a little later, brushing snow from his coat as he stepped through the door. He carried a small, carefully wrapped box in his hand. His cheeks were pink from the cold, his smile shy but warm. "Merry Christmas," he said softly, offering the box to Emma. Her heart fluttered as she accepted it. She peeled back the wrapping to reveal a delicate snow globe, inside of which stood a miniature version of Willowbrook Square, complete with the towering Christmas tree and tiny twinkling lights. "When you're away," David murmured, "you'll have a piece of home with you." Emma's eyes filled with tears, her voice catching in her throat. "It's beautiful. Thank you." She placed the snow globe gently on the mantel, where it glistened in the firelight, and turned back to him with a smile that said more than words ever could. The rest of the day unfolded slowly, tenderly. Games were played, stories were shared, and laughter bubbled up again and again. As night fell and the house grew quieter, Emma sat by the fire, the snow globe glowing softly nearby, feeling a peace she hadn't known in years. Christmas morning had always been special, but this year it felt different, deeper, richer, as though she had finally rediscovered not just the magic of the season, but the warmth of belonging. Chapter 8. The town's winter festival. The night was still, wrapped in a quiet hush that only the first deep snowfall of winter could bring. Willowbrook glimmered under a thick layer of snow, rooftops powdered in white, streets soft and muted. The scent of pine and roasting chestnuts drifted in the air, blending with the faint aroma of fresh cocoa from nearby cafes. Emma stepped out of her family's home, her scarf pulled snugly around her neck, and breathed out in the crisp night. Every exhale drifted into the frosty air, forming small clouds that sparkled under the golden lamplights. She could hear the soft crunch of snow beneath her boots, the distant hum of voices, and the faint, melodic chime of bells from the square. David was already waiting, leaning casually against a lamppost, his gloves dusted with snow. He smiled when he saw her approach, and together they walked toward the town square, where the winter festival had transformed Willowbrook into a wonderland of light and sound. Lanterns floated above the streets, suspended by thin wires, each one glowing with soft golden light. Paper stars swayed gently in the cold breeze, casting warm patterns on the snow below. Families wandered through stalls lined with ornaments, candles, and handmade gifts, their faces glowing with the reflection of tiny lights. Children tugged at parents' hands, cheeks pink from the cold, laughter mingling with the soft murmur of carolers singing nearby. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, letting all the sounds, scents, and sensations wash over her. The festival was alive, not with chaos, but with a gentle rhythm, a heartbeat of the town that pulsed in time with her own. They wandered slowly, hand in hand, stopping at a stall selling lanterns shaped like stars. The vendor handed them each one, tiny flames flickering inside glass enclosures. Emma held hers carefully, the warmth of the glass pressing into her palm. "Make a wish," David said softly, his breath forming small clouds. Emma smiled, thinking of the past weeks, the train ride home, the cozy nights by the fire, the laughter of her family, the quiet moments with David, and the gentle magic of rediscovering Christmas. She whispered her wish into the flame, letting it float upward as if carried by the glow itself. The festival continued to unfold around them. A small band played gentle tunes on acoustic instruments, soft plucks of guitar strings, the rich hum of a cello, the light tap of percussion. Couples swayed on the edges of the crowd. Friends laughed over cups of steaming cocoa, and children raced each other in the snow, their footprints marking the town with fleeting patterns of joy. Emma's eyes drifted to the large Christmas tree in the centre of the square. Its lights twinkled like stars, reflecting off the fresh snow in 100 scattered diamonds. Families gathered around it, their faces lit with anticipation. When the mayor began the final countdown, Emma felt her heart swell with a deep, serene happiness. 3, 2, 1. The tree erupted in brilliant light. Gasps and cheers rose around her, but Emma's focus was inward, on the quiet, steady warmth in her chest, on the life she felt returning to her with every glowing bulb, every soft snowflake, every whisper of the night. David squeezed her hand gently. "Merry Christmas, Emma," he whispered. She leaned her head slightly against his shoulder, letting herself feel the perfect stillness of the moment. "Merry Christmas," she replied, her voice barely audible over the soft hum of celebration. The festival slowly wound down, and Emma and David wandered back through the snowy streets, past closed shops and glowing windows, their footsteps muffled by the thick snow. The lanterns above flickered, the music softened, and the town's heartbeat slowed into the hush of a sleepy winter night. Back at the house, Emma placed her lantern on the windowsill, its soft glow joining the light from the fireplace. The snow had settled outside, leaving the world pristine and quiet. She sat by the fire, David beside her, the warm blanket draped across both of them. The scent of pine and cinnamon lingered, mingling with the faint crackle of the logs. Her eyelids grew heavy, her body warm and content. The gentle murmur of the fire, the soft rustle of the blanket, and the faint whistle of wind against the windows wove a lullaby around her. This is perfect," Emma whispered, barely moving, letting the quiet magic of the night settle into her bones. David smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sleep well, Emma," he murmured, and with that she let herself drift. The cosy warmth of the house, the love of her family, and the quiet magic of Willowbrook surrounding her like a soft, endless hug. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the town in stillness. Twinkling lights reflected in the white, and the world, for a brief, perfect moment, felt entirely at peace.